What? Do I hear the call for some ranking? Some ranking of directors' filmographies? That is quite my specialty, my dear boy. M. Night Shyamalan. M. Night Shyamalan is a filmmaker who's probably more well known for his disasters than his good movies, and some would argue that he has more disasters than good movies. Actually, do a YouTube search and you'll see that some people think he only has bad movies and maybe like 2 good movies. But you know what? I don't allow for that unwarranted negativity to come into my life, so I decided to do my own comprehensive analysis of M. Night Shyamalan's filmography. And I have come to the conclusion that he has done more good than bad. It's all about just your own perspective. When I do these lists, I will watch films based on only 2 aspects. 1, is it 100% the filmmaker's intentions? And 2, how do I like it? Is it good? What do I think about it? Alright, blast off.
Any damsel that's in distress, be out of distress when she meet Jim Dress.
After Earth is my least favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie because I feel like it was truly the first time M. Night Shyamalan took a creative knee for a film. Yes, he wrote and directed it, but the script was polished a bunch of times, and what we see on screen is probably very far away from his vision. This is mostly a Will Smith movie. Are you gonna tell me that the name Cypher Rage isn't something that comes from Will Smith's brain and his idea of what he thinks is good sci-fi? The themes of the film are Shyamalan-esque. I mean, there's a kid who's dealing with a crisis of faith, sort of. Faith in his dad. But I don't know, it's very far removed from that. I guess some shots are pretty cool and they kind of look like they're from The Village. But those are probably the closest touch of the night you'll ever get. The movie's like a Scientologist Sunday school, and don't let anyone else tell you differently. The whole movie is about a little kid learning that holding in your feelings is the right thing to do. And being like your father and just not showing emotions, ever. That's the lesson that is taught at the end, is just don't show emotions. But that's not why it's the worst movie. It's the worst movie because it just doesn't feel like a Shyamalan movie and it's bad.
Water, 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 water.
The Last Airbender. The only reason this isn't the worst movie is because at the end when it says written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, it still sort of feels like it is sort of still an M. Night Shyamalan movie. But don't get me wrong, I don't care about this movie at all. It's a bad film. It doesn't feel like a film that's intended for a audience at all. He really lost control on this one. I mean, there's elements of stuff that, you know, you kind of feel like are his, but at the same time, it just feels like it was like pulled away from him by the studios that probably knew nothing about the source material, so they were just throwing like, hey, here's my niece, she wants to be in one of these movies. That's absolutely true. Look into that. That's how that one girl got cast. Again, this just isn't an M. Night Shyamalan movie, but Aang does feel so much like he could be an M. Night Shyamalan character over whatever the Rages are names in After Earth, that I'd have to put it a little bit higher than After Earth.
Katy Perry, Juicy J.
Wide Awake is Shyamalan's second feature film and is essentially a thesis of what his films will come to deal with in the future. And it's also one of his worst films, so it's kind of a nice precursor to what's to come. It's a movie about a little kid in Catholic school who loses faith in God because his grandpa dies. And he's just like, oh no, God isn't real. And then like there's like little subtle touches showing that God was pushing him in the right direction the whole time to find out that there is God. Sorry, that's the spoiler. It doesn't matter. You're not going to watch this movie. It's very schmaltzy, and there's the classic know-it-all annoying kid that Shyamalan uses throughout his entire filmography that I think is done the worst here, but it's also done the first here. So I give him props for trying or getting it out of his system. Hey, don't watch this movie.
That's my daughter in the water. Everything she...
Lady in the Water is the ultimate Shyamalan strategy guide. It's a terrible movie, but in it we find out exactly how he feels about storytelling, the movie-making industry, and himself. The movie is essentially about Paul Giamatti trying to assemble his own hero's journey with the people that live in his apartment complex. In theory, that sounds fun, and honestly, sometimes it is. There's these wacky characters, like a guy who only works out one side of his body, and these potheads that look like they've never smoked in their entire life. And the film's most vapid attack, a film critic who hates every single movie he's ever seen, and at the end, reviews his own death. All these things sound kind of interesting, but they're kind of just poorly executed and written. But god damn if it isn't unapologetically authentic. There's an actual magical creature in this movie that needs to be saved constantly called story. That's the kind of level of subtlety we're working with here. There's an author who's having trouble writing his next book, and he says that the ideas in his book will inspire the next world leader. And you'd think, if I have to write a character who is the best writer in the entire universe and put him in a movie, I might as well cast myself, because I know that role really well. And guess what? M. Night Shyamalan does it really himself. So what he sold to audiences as a modern version of a bedtime story turns into M9 Comp. But hey, after this, and honestly, I would include this, every single movie that he makes is solid to fantastic. I already know I'm gonna get backlash for putting The Sixth Sense so low, but that just goes to show how much I love the movies above it. The Sixth Sense introduced who M. Night is to audiences in 1999 with a spooky and smart thriller that is genuinely great. I actually only watched this for the first time recently, and it's really unfortunate that the twist is so important to the actual movie's plot, and the fact that the twist is so widely known that it's kind of hard to watch the movie with that kind of baggage. I think Shyamalan does a better job with incorporating his twists in his future films. But a huge twist that no one ever seems to talk about is how good Toni Collette's performance is. But there is a lot to appreciate in this movie. His commitment to the use of the color red is really smart, and you can actually kind of tell how audiences weren't really thrown off by the fact that Bruce Willis barely talks to anybody other than the little kid in this movie. Haley Joel Osment is the polar opposite of what the kid in Wide Awake is. Instead of being a piece of shit know-it-all, Cole actually knows it all, and his struggle with telling anybody about the things he knows is where the drama arrives. And it's hard to talk about this movie at all without mentioning how good HJO is. That boy is a damn miracle. After a bit of a time off working on original material, M. Night brings us a found footage movie about kids who go visit their grandparents. And the movie isn't really found footage because it's a movie that the main character is making herself. Making Becca an actual aspiring filmmaker is such a smart choice because it allows M. Night to make some really incredible looking shots, and it all feels validated because we know that this person knows something about camera work. Let's talk about a return to form. If this wasn't one of the scariest movies I saw that year, and also one of the funniest, his tonal control is back to the precision of signs. Tyler's rapping is cheesy and annoying, but it makes sense for a kid at his age level, and it all kind of melds together really well with the film. I'm just happy to see M. Night getting good performances out of children again. The twist in this one isn't exactly a Sixth Sense level twist, but what is fun about the big reveal is that just opens up a floodgate of reactions that leads to one of the greatest Yahtzee games ever filmed on film. Mommy, Daddy, come and look at me now. I'm a big man in a... If The Visit was him serving up a comeback, Split is him spiking down the comeback in the point zone, volleyball terms. His collaborations with Blumhouse have been exactly what the horror genre needed, and also M. Night needed himself. Containing the film with such a small budget and such restrictions allows him to focus on what is clearly probably his most complicated character he's ever written. Once again, we have a young lead who seems to have all the answers, but as we come to find out, all the past stuff that happens to her and all her characteristics physically are all plot devices and for a symbolic payoff at the end. Some people felt like it was a cheap use of real trauma, but I didn't see anything but real pain in Taylor-Joy's performance. Shyamalan's protagonists are always teetering with a crisis of faith, but Kevin knows exactly what he believes, and it's all about setting up his complicated condition and creating the tension so the audience can have the rumble of terror that haunts the kidnapped girls. We get a lot of exposition through flashbacks, and they feel a little bit forced, but Shyamalan allows a lot of the coloring in between the lines through Anya Taylor-Joy's expressions. She knows how to deal with the situation she's in, but she's withholding information from the film. And it's also just a huge thrill ride for the most part, and it's very funny, etc.
Fly me to the moon, let me play.
What? Over the Sixth Sense? Over Split? Over The Visit? What are you doing, Dumpson? What are you doing? You're an insane man! The Happening is probably one of the most misunderstood films of all time. It was a movie that was sold onto audiences basically under the guise of it just being an R-rated M. Night Shyamalan movie. The film deals with an epidemic of people killing themselves, and I'm gonna be 100% candid right now with you. Open the fence! It's the candid zone. There's some really effective and intriguing filmmaking happening in the opening of this film. There is an enormous amount of staying power with some of the images he creates with people committing suicide. The bit with the construction workers is gruesome and heartbreaking when one of them has to call in the incident while he looks at his friend's mangled, twitching body. His face gives us a glimpse into a world that is only being introduced to these people. As he looks up, he sees people descending from the sky, each landing violently one by one. This sets up an extremely dark and gripping tone that is immediately erased as he smash cuts to Mark Wahlberg's dumb face teaching science to high schoolers. Literally the greatest cut of all time. Lawrence of Arabia, garbage. 2001, trash. The Happening, the Mark Wahlberg right after the suicides, I love it! It sets the tone for the entire film, and Shyamalan did it on purpose. M. Night says that this is his B movie, and that might sound like a Wazowian tactic to cover yourself after making a bad movie, but I think there's a lot of validity to that statement. You know that movie, The Blob? The movie that's on the Criterion Collection? Is this movie not The Blob? Are Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel not giving the worst performances of their entire careers? Is this not an environmental horror movie where people's own paranoia is leading them to their own demise? Even the old lady whose house they stay in at the end of the film says that she's overhearing them planning on murdering her, which is clearly untrue because we haven't seen it. The only people who don't die by suicide are people who actually believe that the plants are destroying the humans. The people that die are openly saying this is a terrorist attack, or you know, they believe because they're around everyone else who is saying this is a terrorist attack. Everyone's always saying, oh, the plants are the ones killing everybody in The Happening? That's so dumb. No! The actual killer in The Happening is the xenophobic post-9/11 paranoia that is driving everyone to panic and lose their minds. The B-movie tropes are there. There's bad acting, there's bad special effects, there's environmental danger that translates into real-world danger. This movie was made to be Mystery Science Theater, and people keep treating it like it's a giant failure. This is hands down the most fun I have watching a Shyamalan movie. Please, for the love of God, I just want someone to watch this movie and laugh because it's funny, not because it's, oh, it's so bad that it's good. I'm a critic and I love bad movies, but I hate the bad movies. Fuck.
Bonjour. 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 Bonjour.
The Village is a very overt turning point in Shyamalan's career. With the success of Signs, it still wasn't 100% his singular vision. The Village is 100% the movie that is head to toe, top to bottom, his singular vision, and it's also good. He's got Roger the freaking Deacon shooting the shit. He's got incredibly composed shots that are so meticulously planned. His use of the bad color and yellow in nature and the costumes is extremely effective in revealing these sheltered people's psyche. It's also pretty terrifying, even if you do know the identity of those who we do not speak of those who do we not speak. He's got Bryce Dallas Howard probably giving the performance of her life. It's just such a shame that he just couldn't make the Adrian Brody character an actual child instead of what Adrian Brody does, which is just simple Jack. I don't want to get as conspiracy ridden or weird about this movie as I did with The Happening, but if you do share my belief that this whole movie is an allegory about the US getting involved in Iraq, then the M. Night Shyamalan scene at the end of the movie is probably the most well-crafted scene that he's ever done in a film. I could write an entire 50-page film essay entitled Adrian Brody is the World Trade Center. Yo, one time for your homie, all y'all ladies, hit that friggin' like button if you want to see me make a whole video dissecting that one scene from M. Night Shyamalan's The Village and tell you why it's a piece of genius. Signs is essentially the ultimate Shyamalan film. It features a priest that has a crisis of faith. It features children's idiosyncrasies being the plot devices that save them in the end. It has the Shy Man himself in it in a pivotal role. The movie blends horror and sci-fi terror and humor so perfectly. The scene in the stairs when Joaquin watches the Brazilian alien footage is iconic. Joaquin is the perfect blend of wacky and spooked out. Again, Shyamalan has a fantastic eye for child actors. Abigail Breslin in her first role is like the perfect creepy kid, but is never too creepy. There's a line that should never be crossed when casting a creepy kid, and as bad as Shyamalan gets, he has never crossed that creepy kid line. Also, shout out to that alien leg and get a load of those gams.
Angel, cause look how death missed his ass. Unbreakable, what you thought they call me, Mr. Glass?
With the highest of expectations put on Shyamalan to be the next Spielberg, he really had to deliver something that surpassed what he's already brought to the table. And in my opinion, Unbreakable not only does it, but it's his best movie. The composition of every frame is so meticulously constructed to only show exactly what needs to be seen. Using the mirror in the first scene to expand the room to make a whole conversation with like 5 people make sense in one take is one of my favorite things I've ever seen in a movie. The camera movement in the opening train scene sets up the comic book panel motif wonderfully. David Dunn is always in a panel, whether it be in a car window, an archway, or a mirror. What I love about this movie the most is that it's so strikingly subtle. It feels like every line of dialogue is whispered, and I love it. Even Samuel L. Jackson is considerably subtle, even though he still gets to be charismatic, but still delivering these admittedly convoluted dialogue. Watching him and Bruce Willis perform with each other is like watching a Tarantino scene happen in real life, where it's like, these people wouldn't really be saying this stuff. Why are you saying this? But you know, it's a Shyamalan movie, you forgive it. The kid in this movie isn't even annoying in a know-it-all way. He just wants to see his dad become the superhero that he knows he is, but is unwilling to live up to. I think that's the most subtle portrayal of what kids actually believe. I remember when I was a kid and I thought my dad actually did some crazy shit that I don't remember now, like probably never happened because it was impossible to happen. It might not be my favorite Shyamalan performance of a child, but it's probably my favorite child character of his. I do want to talk about how this is probably the best twist of his entire career. No spoilers. Not only because it puts the entire movie on its head and forces you to kind of watch it in a different way, but it doesn't affect the plot at all. All it does is open up the door to analyze a character's entire existence in a different light. It does nothing inherently important to the actual plot, but it's so crucial to understanding one of the main characters. Yeah, this is just my favorite Shyamalan movie. I watched it today and it just made me like, yeah, no, 100%, this is the one. So there you have it. Overall, I think Shyamalan's best work has already happened. But if you've seen Split, we have no idea what his career can go to at this point. And isn't that exciting? Isn't it great that there's such an interesting genre filmmaker that was able to break out of a seemingly unbeatable slump and come back fresh and deliver us what seems to be the promise of a lifetime that can literally either solidify his comeback or end his career? Isn't that exciting? Either way, I'm excited. Let me know if you guys like this video, if you like this format. I want to keep doing stuff like this because I love lists. I'm a list man, I'm a ranker. I love ranking things. Let me know if there's a director that you want me to rank films of. I will do anything at this point. Please, let me know in the comments. I love you. That's it, dude. I just said it. I guess I said it.